To order. Director Poston, could you please read our board priorities?
Priorities. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you very much. Director Beck, would you please read the mission and vision statement?
The mission statement: enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. And the vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you very much. For the presentations, we'll turn that over to Superintendent Sneckloff.
Thank you very much, Vice President Hayes. With us tonight, we have 3 of our new cabinet members, and it's an honor and privilege to be introducing them to the board members, to our school board today. First, we have Kim Hoffman, who we are entering into an operational sharing agreement with the AEA. She is going to be overseeing the special education and equity inside of our district, and we're very honored to have her be a part of our team. We had our first cabinet meeting this morning, and it went really well for us. We have Dr. Lisa Stevenson, who is our Director of Learning and Results, and Instructional Leadership Director Ben Driscoll with us today. So like I said earlier, we had our first cabinet meeting this morning, and it went off. The collaboration that was there, we are setting off in the right direction. I wanted to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And so, Kim, you might need to find yourself a microphone, but it is an absolute pleasure for me to introduce. So, Dr. Stevenson, why don't we start with you?
Is this okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Nope. Green light. Got it. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at my first board meeting and to join you in Davenport. And I'm very excited to start in this new role as the Director of Learning and Results, and continuing to work and collaborate and communicate to help Davenport reach its goals and support the board in that process also.
Green means go. Thank you for that introduction. And again, my name is Benjamin Driscoll, and this is my 10th year in Davenport Schools, and I couldn't be more excited about this opportunity to serve this community, this board, and most importantly, our students. I can't stop talking about Davenport and just all the things that we have to offer. We recently put in a recommendation and for a SAM coming from the Bettendorf schools, and I said to him, that's where I came from, and I'm telling you, it's a great move, and you're gonna love it, and I mean that, and I'm genuine. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to it.
Good. I'm too short for this microphone. Does anybody see this? Holy cow. Good evening. I'm Kim Hoffman. As TJ said, I'll be working and supporting you all throughout this next year in the area of special education and equity and a variety of other special populations. I'm currently the Special Education Director for the Mississippi Bend AEA, and I get to work daily with Bill and Shane, which is quite an honor for me. But I'm just very excited to be even more invested in supporting the district and your students as we move forward. And I'm supported by a wonderful team. So you already have a great deal of highly qualified special education staff here in your district. They're supporting students, Susan Downs being one of them. She will be integral this year as we move forward, and I support kind of from afar and in the district on a pretty regular basis. So very excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
So to expand a little bit on each one of the people that are with us, Dr. Stevenson's roots came from, she was an elementary principal. She was a curriculum director in West Liberty and a curriculum director in Marshalltown, and is currently nominated for Central Office Administrator of the Year through SAI. We're very honored to watch that as it unfolds. and she has extensive knowledge with early childhood and English language learners. So we're very, along with the knowledge of the job of being a curriculum director in the state of Iowa. So we're very honored to have you here and looking forward to what you bring to the table. Mr. Driscoll, he is an assistant principal at the middle school. He started as a SAM in our district and an assistant principal at Smart, and moved across the street where they finally got a real principal at Monroe. He replaced me when I moved to central office, so that's kind of our running joke. So we're very excited to have Ben. He's a great systems thinker. Does a wonderful job with parents and families. I've watched him lead an IEP meeting that was absolutely astonishing, and so we're very excited for him to be the leader of our West region. And Kim Hoffman, for those of you that don't know, she has really been integral into the changes that have been made in special education in our district. Our district has collaboratively been working with Kim and her department to make sure that our programming from top to bottom is heading in the direction that it should be, as the AEAs have oversight of the districts. And so, Kim, we're very thankful to have you join our team. So that concludes our presentation today, and I'm sure that they would be entertain any kind of questions that you might have for them. For the record, Dr. Klipsch and Dr. Barney, they have commitments tonight and we're not able to make it, so we'll introduce them at our next regular board meeting.
Could you just tell me where they're all going to be housed?
Sure. Dr. Stevenson, we are looking for an office in the Children's Villages. Ben Driscoll is at West High School. Willie Barney is at North High School. And Kim Hoffman is working anywhere she can set her laptop down, I would say. But she will be housed at the AEA.
So we're putting people in the high schools.
High schools and middle schools.
Oh, where's Dr. Klipsch?
And Dr. Klipsch is at Central High School. So with the movement of sixth graders down, our elementary buildings are pretty packed. And so we asked our elementary buildings to look for satellite spots for people to land for a day or two, so they can work out of there. More of a space issue.
That's why I thought they'd be in middle schools.
Any additional questions for the team? Okay, thank you. On behalf of the board, I'd certainly like to say welcome to each of you. We look forward to working with you. Already worked with Kim on a few situations, so I know what that's like, but I certainly look forward to working with the two of you as well as the rest of the board. Thank you. With summer, as you can see, there is no student board reports. Are there any board reports? And I inadvertently did not mention President Gosay is on the line with us, and Director Potts is ill, so he will not be with us. Seeing as no board reports, we'll remove to open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The open forum request form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or online for those who want to participate in open forum virtually. The link is located on the school board page of the district's website. For those who want to participate virtually, the request must be emailed to Brenda T. at tbrin@davenportschools.org by 3:00 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issues presented during open forum if it's not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. Anyone not in attendance but wishing to speak at open forum may call 563-445-5001 and enter the conference ID number 4431238. Brenda, there are no open forums? No. Okay, we have no open forum requests tonight. Moving on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Madam Vice President,
Director Beck?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as written.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Beck and second by Director Snyder. Are there any questions or any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, motion pass. May I have a motion for the approval of bills?
Madam Vice President,
Director Snyder?
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation for adoption of bills from the bill listing period of 6/23/21 through 7/7/21, whereas resolved all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just, and warrants drawn on the treasury for several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of 6/23/21 through 7/7/21 with the following voided check. Number 14426 to School Specialty Inc. for the wrong vendor.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Director Snyder, second by Director Klein-Jerome. May I call for the vote? Director Snyder?
Yes.
I'm sorry, was there any discussion? Okay, Director Snyder, yes.
Yes.
Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion passed. Is Superintendent's report?
Yes, I wanted to give a brief update on McKinley Elementary School. Not too long ago, we had a fire that occurred late in the evening, and I want to give a big thank you to Josh Hermansky and his team and Principal Vincent for showing up and staying there till late in the evening to make sure that the building was safe and secure and that the families were communicated with. I think that was a pretty valiant effort on Mr. Vincent's part to be there. And so, again, just another example of the wonderful leadership that we have in our district. The access to the building occurred from an exterior door that leads into a janitor's closet where there's currently an investigation going on, and I wanted everybody on the board to know that the fire department is well into that investigation and plans on moving forward with whatever findings they have of pressing charges. So the second piece that I wanted to know is that Mr. Hermansky is taking care of filing all the appropriate claims and moving forward with the restoration in the building. I just wanted to give the board a brief update on that because it was quite the incident for our students. Our students for summer programming, it happened on the opposite side. We were able to move forward. The environment was kept safe. So just wanted to tip the hat to Principal Vincent and Mr. Hermansky and his team for getting there in a swift manner, staying there till 4 in the morning. Yes, 3:34 in the morning. That's when I got my last text message from Josh. So, Josh, thank you to your team. And Mr. Vincent, I know you're online, so thank you for doing that for the safety of our students. So there's a plan to move forward with the restoration to be complete before the start of school. So just wanted to give everybody a heads up. And our local officials are taking that very seriously. So.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
Being a McKinley parent, I have some access to the rumor mills that surround these kinds of things. The current rumor is that there have been 2 incidents. Can you clarify?
So I was asked not to comment any further on the
Okay.
investigations, but they they are well on their leads and
Okay.
and understand and are moving forward appropriately with their investigation. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Director Snyder?
Even though you just said I've been asked not to comment, can you tell us approximately what kind of dollar value and damage we were looking at?
I believe it's around $75,000 or so. 65 to 75,000.
Director Klein Jerome?
You indicated that there will be charges filed. What about school? How will we handle it? I mean, will there be discipline issues because it was on school property and these were, I'm assuming, Davenport School students?
Again, that's part of the investigation, and probably shouldn't comment on that at this point. But if those were Davenport School students, we would act accordingly.
Any further discussion? You're moving on to committee reports. Are there any? Okay, moving right along to items requiring action. May I have a motion for policies for board approval?
Madam Vice President,
Director Beck?
I move that the board approve the policy committee recommendations for policies 504.1, 504.02, 504.03, 504.05, 504.06, 505.06, 506.03, and 506.04. And I'm sorry, that first one should be 504.01.
Thank you for that correction. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Beck?
Real quick before the vote, sorry. I wasn't fast enough on raising my hand. I just wanted to clarify for anybody who's listening, this is our second, we've already discussed these twice. And so that's why it may seem that we're voting on them without discussion, but we've already discussed these twice. So
Okay. May call for the vote now. Director Beck?
yes.
Klein Jerome?
Yes.
President Gosa?
Yes.
Director Faustin?
Yes.
Director Schneider?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion passed. May I have a motion for item number 10.02, instructional support levy?
Madam Vice President,
Director Schneider?
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation and approve the resolution to set an August 9th, 2021 hearing date to consider the continued participation in the instructional support program. The said resolution is attached to item requiring action 10.02 under public content.
May I have?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion? And just for the record, the instructor support program expires on June 30th, 27. The attached documents, as Director Snyder mentioned, in the resolution is set a date for a hearing on August 9th to continue participation in the instructional support program beginning July 1st, 22. A notice will be published on 10 to 20 days before the meeting. Any additional comments or discussion? Call for the vote, or I'm sorry, Director Snyder.
I just want to reiterate for anybody just tuning in on this, this is not new money, not a new tax, not anything new we are looking for. School districts participate in these. This basically lays out how we're going to pull the money, and it's something that is expiring, and these are done on a 5-year cycle, so that's all this is.
Thank you for that explanation. Anyone else? President Gosa?
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. Call for the vote. Director Schneider?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion passed. And moving on to discussion items. First one is 11.01, policies for board second discussion. We'll turn that over to Director Beck.
Thank you. We are, as we typically do, bringing forward policies that the policy committee has proposed or adjusted for a second discussion. So the first one is policy 502.04 on student complaints and grievances. This is a policy laying out basically how students can file complaints and grievances and the chain of command through which that communication would go. And so if anyone has any questions or comments. Okay. The second one is policy 505.04. This is on the testing program. This is basically stating that we test our students. This would refer to typically the standardized tests that most students participate in, and that we do not require students to share potentially sensitive information on these without their prior consent, and that it is the responsibility of the superintendent and principals to develop the administrative regulations for this testing, and that the board reviews and approves this testing program periodically. Any questions, comments? Okay. The next one is policy 507.03. This is a communicable diseases policy. It is consistent with current health practices regarding communicable diseases. This does not apply to special situations such as the COVID pandemic. We have other policies in place for that, but this is for this is basically how students, when students can and cannot attend school, and who is in charge of developing the protocols, the administrative protocols for this. Questions? Yes, Director Snyder.
Last we knew, we were sending this over to district nurse, and she was going to verify that this is indeed the practices that we follow in the district, and I'm assuming that came back as a yes.
Was that this one, or was that because there was one that was very specific to what we do inside of our district?
Maybe that could be.
So I
It
think
was
that-
the other policy.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
not this one. This is more of a broad,
Okay.
based on Iowa Department of Public Health information. Other questions?
And that has happened.
Okay. The next one is policy 507.04. This is student illness or injury at school. Basically, that the school will
Priorities for the school year. And so we met last week, I believe it was, or early this week. Is it Friday, thank you. Well, early this week's today. Thank you very much. So we met last week to kind of go through, and just like any other committee that we have, we previewed the information and wanted to do a presentation to the school board about what we believe the priorities could be as we move forward. And so in the documents that you have, you'll notice that the priorities that are set through the IASB legislative priorities, we've identified the following areas as priorities for as we move forward into next year's sessions. Preschool, In Davenport, preschool is one of the best interventions that we have. And so to advocate for the expansion of that would be incredible. Early literacy, we know, is going to be one of our focus for next year. Dropout prevention and at-risk mental health. Those two components, with coming off of a pandemic, credit recovery at an all-time high, mental health, obviously coming off of a pandemic, reintroduce. I mean, just think about, this is the first time we've sat at a board table this close, and Linda and I are bumping elbows, and it's just a very unique environment. So imagine our students as we come back. Teacher recruitment and licensure, it's been a huge issue across the state and nationwide. Finding a workforce that is licensed and recruiting them to come to our area. And then some of the last priorities that we have: market competitive wages, benefits, special education, both state and federal. Those are some of the priorities that we thought. What we also had sent to the board members the entire packet of what the IESB has put out there. So we wanted to open it up for discussion. Director Poston or President Gozer, was there anything that you wanted to add to what I have said so far from our legislative committee?
Well, all 9 items are quite important, but I think there's a reason we put preschool and early literacy at the top of the list. If we can get some more funding, especially with preschool, and work at our early literacy, a lot of other problems down the road will go away. But all 9 issues are quite important to the district, and so I encourage all board members to. I think we want it narrowed down to 4. So take a close look at this and come back at the next meeting with your ideas.
President Goza, was there anything that you wanted to add?
I think you both covered it very well, and I echo Director Poston's sentiments about early literacy and preschool, as we thought was a very, very top priority for us. So
now we'll open it up to discussion.
Director Beck.
This is a favorite topic of mine. So a couple questions. So when we're coming up with these legislative priorities, this is so that the IASB knows, they gather this information from all of the districts, correct? And they decide what they're going to spend their time lobbying our state legislature for. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that's what we're asking here. We're not talking about specifically what we are necessarily as individuals or as an individual board are going to be doing, but these are the things that we as a board think are important and would like our lobbying group to advocate for, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. Can I ask how, I guess, and I couldn't bring it up right away, but how many things did they send out? How many suggestions did IASB send out? What did we narrow it down from?
A lot.
Okay.
Probably 20.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
And then also there's a survey being sent to the UEN. I think Superintendent Schneekloth was going to do that. So.
And I guess my next question then is, we know there are a lot of things that changed, a lot of legislation that directly affects the functioning of districts that passed this most recent legislative session. Does IASB work sort of, if some of those things are maybe turn out not to be the greatest ideas or are working really well, does IASB go back and work with the legislature to make those things work the way they should? Or
So the Davenport schools belongs to the UEN and the rural schools
okay,
of Iowa. And what Director Poston was referring to is this is the IESB portion. There is an urban education network portion that survey is the survey that's going to let the urban education network know that these priorities and how are these things affecting the urban districts in the state of Iowa. And so that advocacy, I would say, was probably more coming from that area.
Okay.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Could you explain under teacher recruitment and licensure, the alternative teacher licensure? What are they suggesting? I would hate to see a watered down version of a teacher license.
So I think in some of our hard to find positions, we're looking in those areas, but also there are thank you, Jamie.
Sure. A couple examples would be when we talk about non-traditional education backgrounds. There's some programs through our program through UNI where you have somebody like John Deere that took a severance and wants to get into teaching, and they're doing a special program with UNI to become a teacher without doing all of the student teaching and some of the extra work, but they have that professional background. So trying to pull more people probably out of industries and get them into teaching and having an opportunity, their bachelor's, they have their bachelor's degree, but it's not in teaching, and working through a kind of a fast track in a sense to get them a license.
And they wouldn't be student teaching? Is that what you were saying? So I'll just say from a teacher standpoint, I would oppose that.
She said they're student teaching in RAP.
I just happen to know about this because I teach, I support the RAPPL program. It's RAPIL, and that's the Regents University's alternative certification. So it helps fill gaps in grades 5 through 12 for hard to fill areas. So that's a great example. So they take coursework in the evenings. They're professionals year 1 in whatever career they are currently working in. And then year 2, they're actually out teaching in a supervised student teaching experience. And then they're offered licensure at the end of that second year. So it's basically like a 2-year graduate program for people who might have a bachelor's degree in mathematics or chemistry, but they didn't actually get the teacher certification when they went the first time around. So I think they're at the state level on like cohort 14. There's been 14 groups of individuals in the state that have gone through, and it's a nice way for people who maybe weren't sure they wanted to be teachers, but then over time decided that's what they wanted to do. And it also helps fill a lot of like STEM areas, computer science, world languages, things that we have challenges typically in filling in most public school districts. I wouldn't say it's watered down at all. It's a pretty rigorous program.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional discussion? I think my question is probably for Jamie. With the reciprocity agreement, will we accept licensure for other states, or how is that converted?
Right now, that's a challenge. So that's probably why it's on this list, is it's very difficult for people. It's easy for Iowa teachers to go into Illinois. It's difficult for Illinois teachers to come into Iowa. So Iowa's pretty strong in their requirements as far as getting a license or regional.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion? Director Beck?
And you guys, my other question was, we're going to vote on what we choose as our 4 priorities to send to them at our next regular meeting. Is that correct? Okay.
Okay, so again, reiterating what Director Poston said, for the first meeting in August, we should come back with our choices. Okay. Okay, moving right along, we'll move to 11.03, long-range facility plan. Superintendent Schneckloff.
We wanted to put in front of the board the actions that we're currently taking for our long-range facility plan. Josh Hermansky has put together a timeline for us, and we wanted to give you an update of where we've been and where we're going. We're currently in the RFP process for locating an architect. And so, Josh, why don't you kind of talk to us about where we've been, and then I'll kind of lean into where we're headed in the future, and how integral this part is to moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So TJ and I and Bill met back in April to start getting things rolling here with the long-range facility plan. Eric Page and I had worked together for a few months putting together an actual document to put out to the firms we selected. We also met with a couple other districts to see what theirs looked like, so we could kind of share ideas and thoughts about what we think a good way to go about this is. We also put together a rubric and a matrix to score the interviewees in the process. I think doing this and working through this process with about 9 different firms or 10 different firms is kind of the key to us hiring the right firm to push our needs forward. I sent this document out to about 9 different people, and they've all responded back, and we'll probably get a pretty good selection of firms to choose from. Do you want more from that?
So once we've selected our firm, the data will be collected. We will then begin a community team that will help set the vision for where do we want to go when we move forward in terms of our facilities. This is an absolute vital next step for Davenport Community School District. And the vision for that needs to come from the community. And so not very long ago, I started asking for stakeholders from the school board members out ahead of this process getting started. When we go to hire this firm, we will have a school board member. Dan goes as the president has agreed to be a part of the interview team, but then we're going to set up a structure very similar, because this has worked for us. We found a pattern that works for us. We are going to set up a long-range facility committee with school board members on it. And that team will be responsible for informing the board. Absolutely vital for informing the board. That team will meet regularly, and there will be a district team that works behind the scenes and kind of brings that information to that school board long-range facility planning team, and that team will help inform the board. That is the exact model of our finance committee, and that works for us. We have a financial team that meets every Tuesday. We prepare the statements. We work through all of our information. Kevin's doing an excellent job leading that team. And we meet once a month with our school board members. They give us great feedback, great information, which allows us to then make changes, decisions, and be transparent. And this is exactly the way that this facility planning team is going to be. We have a long-range facility plan right now, but the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic, the changing in our environments that we've had, it's time for us to reevaluate that and move forward. And the vision of that, this group, this firm, the one that's selected, will help guide us through that, but it will absolutely be my charge and our charge to move it forward. And as we begin to move forward in this long-range facility planning, it's very exciting. It is an absolute wonderful opportunity to set the future, to set the stage for the Davenport Community School District for a long time. It's legacy work. And I'm very excited to start that work. It's not going to be an easy journey, but I know that we're heading in the right direction with that. So we kind of wanted to give you an update. We're going to begin to have regular updates on this. As you can see, the plan is to do the interviews, do a discussion on the 9th, and vote it on the 23rd so we can get rolling. So that's an update from that. I'll turn it back over to you, Vice President.
Any questions? Director Kleintraum?
So by August 23rd, we would have a firm in place. When would we actually see some action? Is it going to take them a whole school year to say, okay, here's what we need to do? Or what's the timeline after we've hired the firm?
So the timeline will be lots of data collection. That'll be the first thing. And we have some historical data that might just need to be updated. We'll also need to work with the city to gather data. From there, a part of the RFP that we put into was stakeholders and working with stakeholders. So that work will begin. And so I would say that the action will begin to come very shortly after the firm is hired.
It is a long process, though. This isn't like in 1 month we're done. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot of buildings, a lot of ground to cover, a lot of history.
So by the spring of 22, you think we would have a plan in place to say, okay, this is what we are going to do? Or sometimes I feel like we just move way too slow.
It's hard to say for sure. I understand what you're saying. I think we're going to push them, but without talking to the firm that we hire, they'll probably guide us a little bit more on timelines to the end date. And if we want to push them to make them go a little faster, we can do that. But you guys ultimately establish that timeline the best you can, reasonably.
Thank you.
Director Beck?
Yeah, I have two questions. Number one, do we have, I know sometimes, we send out an RFP and for whatever reason, only one firm replies or something like that. Do we have a minimum number of firms that we will accept before we do this, or is it?
We haven't said we have a minimum number, but we've already met a number of them or have emailed us and responded back. They will respond to us. So we will have a good number of respondents. Yes.
Okay, good. That's good to know. And then my other question was, part of this is they send people to every building and property in the district, correct, and evaluate it in terms of how much money it's going to cost to keep it up for another 20 years and to bring it up to whatever current standards are and to house X number of students. That's part of this, correct?
Yes.
Can we reasonably say, kind of getting back to Director Klein-Jerome's thought, that this process is likely to take no more than a year? I guess I know it's important to get it right, but we also, as board members, need to be able to plan and budget. And the longer this takes, the harder it's going to be for us, because we budget on a yearly basis. We need to be able to do that, to make sound decisions. And you never know, some of these decisions affect the community. So we have to be able to have time to communicate those concepts and ideas and visions. So I guess I don't know what it normally takes, and I'm sure some of it's dependent on the size of the district, but
It is. I think we probably can nail down that time frame better after we interview them.
Okay.
And maybe feel out what the firms are telling us it's going to take them. Maybe that's part of who we hire and don't hire. I mean, if it's going to take way too long, that might be part of our decision-making process.
Okay.
That's good feedback. I think we should absolutely incorporate that. I would agree with your sentiments. It's not something we want to rush.
No.
Absolutely. I hear the sense of urgency, and we need to make sure that we get it right.
Mm-hmm.
So, well said.
Director Snyder?
I've got quite a few questions, but most of them, in fact, all of them except one, I will wait until we get an actual firm, because really none of those will matter until then. But I am wondering if, we've always had a long-range facility plan in the past, and there was a lot of thought and effort and planning that went into those, and the ones that never got implemented, some of these teachers for classroom upgrades, building principals, there was a lot of communication on those, and they've been waiting a very long time. If you ask any teacher or any administrator, obviously their project is the most important that needs to happen right away. But I'm hoping we will utilize some of the old data from the existing plan, at least for consideration going forward, because, example, the music room at North, was a very long process to get that done. And I mean, that was a middle school that is now a high school that they were working up, for a band room that was designed for a middle school for a number of years. And there was other projects like those on that plan. So I would hope that there will be considerations from that old plan pushed into the new one.
There absolutely will be, and I think that the voice from our community and is going to be critical into that as well. But absolutely correct. There's a lot of time and effort and thought that has been put into what do we want moving forward in the future, and that will absolutely be a part of it.
Any additional discussion? Director Poston?
After visiting all the school buildings in the district, obviously there's quite a few needs, physical needs in the buildings, especially in our older elementary buildings. So I guess I'm along the same thought process as Karen, is that I think we need to move this process along as quickly as possible. It's going to have a dramatic effect on our budget. So from our finances, we can't continue to carry some of these buildings and still maintain a proper budget. So again, I understand we can't rush into this, but we've been talking about this for 6 months to a year, and now we're just getting a good start on it. So I think we need to speed the process up.
Director Clandron?
Where would I find our current long-range facility plan?
It's right on our website.
Pardon me?
It's on our website underneath the operations page.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We have been talking for quite some time about right-sizing our district, so I'm really looking forward to this. And I don't know if you noted on here, on July 16th, which is Friday, that's the last day to receive any questions regarding the RFP. So if you have any other discussion that you need clarification on, please get that to Josh. Okay, discussion item number 11.04, Power School hosting fee. Superintendent Snecklaw?
Kevin, if you would like to take the lead on this one, please.
Sure. This is a continuing support contract for our, it says Power School, but you hear us talk about Business Plus. Business Plus is our accounting platform. It also does several functions for human resources. This is our annual cost for this software. It is for 1 year. It's off. It's not a fiscal year, but it's very close, from September to August. But it's a renewal that we need. And I just wanted to note one thing in here that isn't stated. We will be doing an upgrade to our Business Plus software in October, which will be a lot more efficient. But we need to get this contract moving so that we can have that upgrade come October. It's imperative that we do that.
Director Beck?
I think I ask this every year, but every once in a while, I know migrating to a new system is really not an easy task, but every once in a while, we should evaluate whether we're getting the best value for the software, right? So how often do we do that for this stuff? Every 5 years, every 10? Have we ever? I know you haven't been here very long, but I'm guessing this is kind of a commonly used software program.
I couldn't answer that question. You're right. I don't have an answer to that. But
Okay.
I do know that with all the new staff we have using this, not just at this table, but some of our support staff, it's very important that we have some continuity at this point in time. Okay. There will come a time where we evaluate that, but right now is not the time to do that.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, just the license, is the fee pretty similar to from year to year?
Yes, it is about an 12% increase, which
Okay.
that sounds like a lot, 12%, but it was just a little under $1,000
Okay.
less per month right now than it will be for next year.
Okay. So, thank you.
And it will be PEPAL funded.
And at what?
PEPAL funded. That's where it's funded currently. It'll continue there.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Klein-Drone,
That answers my question. Pepple,
Yes.
that's all I want to know.
Director Snyder.
Is this fee user-based, or is it just a flat fee, and as many people as we need to use it can use it?
It's a flat fee, so it's as many users as we need.
Okay.
Any additional questions? And again, this is September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2022. Okay, and if anyone is needing any more information in order to vote on that, please be sure to ask those questions. Moving right along to 11.05, data presentation. Superintendent Sneckloff.
Thank you. I would like to invite Shane Williams from the AEA up to lead us into a data discussion. Board members, I know that you have your IASB questions with you, so if you would get those out and kind of reference those. I would also like to invite our new directors to lean into this conversation today. So as I know that you're new to this this type of discussion, but I would like to openly invite you to lean into this conversation. Shane has set this up to where it is very similar to what you've seen in the past, and it's something that we're trying to get into a rhythm and a cadence to looking at data. Whether or not this is the same format that we will continue to look at, we'll have Dr. Stevenson's flavor to it as we move forward. For now, Shane, thank you for coming today and presenting this data with us. So go ahead. Thank you.
These are going to mirror the data that we looked at after the winter testing period, and that stimulated a lot of board dialogue. So Superintendent Schneckloff thought it might be a good idea for us to follow up and close the loop, so to speak, on this year's data and how we're using those data to plan for the early literacy changes that are going to be implemented and scaled in the coming months and in the coming years.
As you're looking at this, I want to let the board know that there's a team of people from Davenport Community Schools right now that have looked at this data, understand the data, and they're currently working with the AEA to build the early literacy plan for next year based off of what you're seeing. So as I know as a school board member, when we were looking at this and at cabinet this morning through the eyes of a school board member, their questions were like, so Dr. Stevenson's words exactly, so what, now what? And so as you are looking at this with all kinds of questions, that team of people is working on that. And I know both Mr. Driscoll and our other ILDs and Dr. Stevenson and Shane are members of that group. I think Kim is one of the leaders of that group as well. So just as you're looking through this, we have seen this data. We're ready to act with this data with a plan. So I just wanted to kind of set the stage for that as we're looking at this data. Thank you, Shane. Sorry
Yeah, no, I appreciate that for broader context. And so what you'll see is a direct replication of the slides we looked at a few months back. Again, there were a lot of questions, concern expressed from the board wanting to see some immediate action. Now, this year was a very atypical year. We want to recognize that. And at the same time, we also want to recognize the gravity of where we are with respect to early literacy at the elementary level in particular, and then start talking about some solutions as we move forward. Today's more about broad awareness. We want to analyze these data, make sure that there's shared understanding and commitment from the board perspective. So as we're running through this, as TJ said, be happy to answer the questions that I can. We can also direct questions to new central office administrators for their input as well. But we'll just kind of run through. And I know that following the last presentation, there was a board request to have some subsequent follow-up on middle school data. There's also been a desire to look at some preschool data as well as high school data. So we'll be looking at adding that probably to a future committee of the whole meeting where we can spend a little bit more time processing and diving more deeply into those pieces.
We actually looked at our agenda committee. Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, we have them scheduled. So the board requests that are around that area are, I believe, are scheduled.
They are for
Yes. Thank you.
So the first slide you'll see here is just an aggregate look at grades kindergarten through sixth grade. Again, just to maybe review the assessment that is used. This is a state tool that districts all across the state of Iowa use. It measures proficiency with respect to early literacy skills as well as some later development as you get into the upper grades. The early grades here at kindergarten and first grade used an assessment called early literacy. So it assesses the extent to which students are on the right trajectory on phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, those early literacy skills, decoding. And then as you get older, this particular assessment focuses more on the comprehension side. So we're looking at A reading when we look at grades 2 through 6. So that's just a little bit of background on the actual assessment that is used and what these scores reflect. So I remember some of the highlights from a few months ago that board members had expressed some concern about, and I also shared those with you as well, was the kindergarten and first grade looking at that pretty big drop from fall to winter. Now, granted, keep in mind this is a moving target. We expect kids to keep pace with what those benchmark scores are. And if you look at the orange on that particular graph, you can see that in kindergarten and first grade, we were not keeping pace with that moving target, that benchmark. But then you can also see in spring there was a very large rebound in both kindergarten and first grade. I looked at scores across the entire AA just to see how that growth level compares to the sum total of the students we serve. And that kindergarten bump from 44% at benchmark to 53% at benchmark was significantly higher. Now, granted, most districts did not experience the level of drop between fall and winter, so I also want to acknowledge that is atypical. You would expect students to see consistent progress and increasing from fall to winter to spring. That didn't happen, but what I think is encouraging is the rebound that did occur from winter to spring in terms of the kids who are at benchmark. So I think that's a positive light on that. We also have to situate this in the broader context and recognize that also means that only 53% of our kindergartners are moving on to first grade at the level that they should be. And only 43% of our first graders are moving on to second grade at the level that they should be. So while I think there's some positives there in terms of that increase from winter to spring, we also have to recognize the challenge that's before us, that in some cases over half of our students in Davenport are not at the level they need to be proficient with respect to those benchmark scores. And then you can see where the rest of the grade level breaks down. So I'm going to pause here to see if there's any questions or feedback that any one of us can take a stab at answering.
Director Feintraub?
When you say early literacy, are we looking at kindergarten, first, second? And
K1.
Oh, just K1?
Yeah, and when I say that, that's because that's the assessment. It's an early literacy assessment. And then grades 2 through 5, they move into, in this particular year, a computer adaptive test was used. So the kids sit down and they answer questions, and then it adjusts based on how well the students are doing. So it's more of an assimilation of a lot of different skills. It's a comprehension, but it tests some other skills. It's just not as discrete as those early literacy skills that are tested at kindergarten and first grade.
So your committee is just looking at the skills and how you're going to teach just K1 students? Is there another committee looking at second through sixth?
The committee that's putting together that plan, that comprehensive long-term plan, is looking at K3. And there's some reason. That's not that fourth, fifth, and sixth grade won't also have some emphasis. Part of it is homing in on where you can have the largest impact on kids. And the research is pretty clear that the malleability of student proficiency on literacy skills, you can get far more productivity and growth out of those earlier grades, K3. You still want to wrap a comprehensive intervention system around your fourth, fifth, and sixth grade students and beyond to make sure that they're moving forward. But in terms of the actual literacy plan that we're looking at, we're focusing on kindergarten through third grade. Preschool will also be a part of that. We're fortunate to have Dr. Stevenson in her background in preschool. So what we're looking at is a seamless integration from preschool all the way through the system.
Director Poston?
I've seen enough data on literacy, and what I want to see is a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not moving forward. We're not doing anything. Okay, now we're setting up a committee to study this again. Let's get a plan together, and let's get it now. could we possibly pick an elementary, take a school, and just plug in a bunch of resources and just see what would happen in that particular building and what would happen to test scores? I mean, we can study this data all day long, but we got to implement something and get something going. And if we're talking about, there should be something in place at the start of school. Okay. I don't know if that's happening or not, but you can keep throwing this data to us, but let's do something.
Yeah, I appreciate the enthusiasm and energy behind that. That's the plan. We're meeting with the Department of Education on Wednesday to run through the initial plan. We'll probably get some feedback on that, back to the drawing board, make some course corrections, and then that's our plan is at BSAT Summit this year. Director Postian it's go time.
Let's make it a Davenport Community School District plan, shall we?
It is. It's Davenport. The Davenport team is developing it, and then we're getting approval on that because that is one of the corrective actions.
Who do we have to get approval from?
We're meeting with Amy Williamson at the Department of Education. I'm optimistic that we're on the right track, and we're going to get a lot of positive affirmations on that. I'm confident of that. There's been a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of really intelligent, passionate people sitting around the table pulling that together. So I'm optimistic we're going to move forward at a high velocity.
If there isn't something done by this fall and an actual plan in place and getting going here, we're behind the 8 ball. We're losing. We're not gaining.
Director Beck?
I guess I share some of Director Postian's concerns that this is something we've talked about consistently for several years, and I know that this is something of concern to you guys too, and we all agree on the urgency. I agree. I'd like to see something in place sooner than later, because every year that we don't, focus and pour resources into it, then we're remediating at those higher grades for those students who didn't make the benchmark, right? Because now when we're looking at the first graders who are moving on to second grade, not meeting benchmark, early literacy is going to help filter out problems in the future, but we still have to make sure we don't forget about, I know it's a lot, it's juggling, right? We have to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. So I am totally in support of pouring resources into early literacy. That's something I'm very passionate about. And I'm excited to see some of the things that come down the pike. But I do agree that we really need to get something done now. And I think one of the things that I've been wondering about is we have an opportunity here that's been born out of the pandemic. So we lost a lot of reading skills, or some of our students may have, because of that pandemic, because they weren't in person or just the world in general. But we now have funding like ESSER funding and the CARES Act, and it's ESSER at this point,
Yep.
for the next couple of years, where we may have an opportunity, and I am not on the finance committee, so I'm not committing any money, but we may have an opportunity here to come up with temporary 2-year reading interventionist positions, or hiring extra paras whose focus is only on literacy in the elementary schools, right? Just so that we are really driving this home and not leaving any of our students behind. And I think that's the kind of thing that I think would, if I may speak for Director Postian, would help alleviate some of our concerns. But we have the money now, potentially. We should take advantage of that. Even if it is a temporary position, we can at least make some strides in those students now, because every year that we go, without focusing, we're going to lose a few more. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the sense of urgency. I think that sense of urgency is for sure shared among the committee, the central office administrators, all the way down to the classroom teacher level. Everybody wants to do what's right for kids in Davenport. So we have a shared purpose moving ahead.
Any additional questions? Director Kleinjro?
And I do hope that a great plan comes out of this, but that you don't take that plan and just dump it on top of everything they are currently doing, because nobody can handle one more thing. So you've got to look at overall what they're doing, offload what really isn't necessary, and focus on really getting these scores up. And it can't be, and one more thing, and one more thing. Nobody can take one more thing.
Yeah, that's actually been a frequent topic of conversation, is how do we streamline this and make it manageable and not place additional burdens, not only on the system, but on individual teachers, while they're not only juggling the literacy challenges you see here, but also the social emotional effects of not being in school and some of those challenges that have existed for a long time, but have been amplified by the effects of it.
So if I could, I would like us to continue to go through our slides, because this is the first slide of about 9 or 10 or 11. And I greatly respect the passion. I think it's important for us to get into some of the disproportionality issues that we're looking at. And that's why it's really important for us to look at this data today. So Shane, and thank you for your comments. And that's kind of why I said what I said at the outset of what we're talking about, because everyone in this room and everybody sitting over there and all of our teachers in our community feel that same sense of urgency. So I'm glad to hear our board members have it as well. Thank you, Shane.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and, if you just go past the fourth page and on to the fifth, because the fourth is a duplication of the first. It's just in table format, and the rest of these are all in table format. Here's what Superintendent Schneckloff is talking about. If you can look at some of the achievement gaps that exist with the race and ethnicity categories. Again, similar numbers to what we saw in the winter when we looked at that fall to spring gap. And we have that's a heavy lift that speaks to the disproportionality and the opportunity and achievement gaps that exist there too.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question on that? Is this K through 6 students?
It is, yes.
Okay. And do we know if we account for economic status? Is it relatively similar?
So we'll look at one that has the FRL numbers, free and reduced lunch numbers
Okay.
too. You know, you could take this to a different level, and you could look within each demographic area and break that down by free and reduced. And if the board would want to see that, we could certainly do
Okay,
that at some
well.
point too.
Thank you.
So here's that number exactly, Director Beck. You can see the free and reduced compared to the non-free and reduced lunch status
Got it,
and where
got
they
it.
fall on that percent benchmark or proficiency.
Thank you.
Then we have our English learners. And then our students who have IEPs or students who qualify for special education, you can look at the gaps there as well.
Is that all students with an IEP in K through 6?
It is.
And so when we're doing this, these data do not take into account what their IEP is for, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that could be any number of things. It could be a speech-only IEP. It could be a goals in math. Could be goals in behavior. Could be goals in literacy, or all the above.
Okay.
So the next slide, which we're on page 9 now of the packet, this is just a historical look at that progression over time. And one thing that the committee kind of looked at when we were initially establishing the foundation was, if you look at this is, I think, a really eye-opening number that jumps off the page. In the winter of 2020, so this is pre-pandemic, 76% of our kindergartners were at benchmark. Mm-hmm. And if you jump diagonally, when those same students came back in the fall of 2020, only 33% of them were able to retain that benchmark status. So again, I think that speaks to the significant effect that March to September, no structured learning time really had on students, and the effect of that. And it's, again, we can't admire the problem to what Director Postian is saying. We've got to do something about it. And the only way you do that is by changing the teaching and learning that occurs in classrooms every day. So,
Can I highlight one positive out of that?
Yeah.
I would like to say for both the 2018, 2019 and 2019, 2020, what we had were students not meeting benchmark when they came into kindergarten and a lot more reading at benchmark level by the end of kindergarten. And I think that speaks to something that our kindergarten teachers were doing well, and that we should applaud, that they were doing something well before. Not that everybody isn't doing something well, but that's something we should applaud and remember when we think back on this last couple of years.
I agree. I mean, the heroic work really takes place at the classroom level. That's where the changes happen. So again, similar data over time in the demographic areas that you see reflected on that slide. And then same thing with free and reduced lunch and non-free and reduced lunch. Same pattern. And then EL students compared to non-ELs or native English speakers. And then students who have IEPs compared to students who do not have an IEP. So again, this is more of that 30,000 foot view that I think is applicable for the board and others to engage. Now, when we look at it, we do disaggregate a little bit more deeply when we're talking about actual matching solutions to the challenges that exist. And of course, teachers take it even to a deeper level because they're talking about individual students and not the aggregate numbers. But I'll pause there. Any additional questions from the board on this topic?
Okay, thank you,
I think Director Beck.
Oh, I have one question.
Director Beck.
And I think Director Snyder might have one after me. So first of all, I do want to say I appreciate the fact that this is coming back again, because that's something that we as a board have talked about. And that's an improvement over previous years. We didn't always get the follow-up. And so it's really, I think it's good that we're able to see the next step. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening, having a presentation from a classroom teacher or at each level explaining, what's going on in the classrooms to help us get our students up to where they need to be for reading. So thank you.
Yeah.
Director Snyder.
It as last time, it's the same story, different night. Again, it's our black and brown students. It's our free and reduced students, but the most appalling number to me is the IEP students. That's completely unacceptable. I will be turning in a board request after this meeting that we have a board meeting to discuss the plan that is approved before we are to vote on it. Because this board, and rightfully so, takes a beating on data like this, that we're getting this data, and as Director Postian said, we're not seeing results come from this data. We're just seeing more data thrown at it to support what the last data collection found. We need to take steps, we need to take action, and we need to do it immediately. These students need it, deserve it, and will get it. COVID has had a terrible, terrible effect on our kids everywhere. But we can't use that as an excuse or a crutch to say, well, that's why we have these numbers. We need to take these numbers and use that as a motivating factor to get us back to where we were and above. And this board member, or these board members, we have connections, we have ideas, we have resources. If we're going to get hammered on this data, we should at least have input on this plan that is going to be put into place.
Director Kleinstrom.
And I don't know which one of you should answer this. What are we doing in summer school? We're offering it. We have people who have worked hard to get kids there, but what are we doing that's addressing this issue?
So a lot of some of the planning that has gone into summer school fits exactly into the plan for next year. So the strategies, the tools that we're utilizing in our early literacy are exact same things that are going to flow right over into the next year. We have established summer school learning sites at every single one of our schools, where in the past we've done satellite positions. The offering of this is to anyone that's below grade level in those areas. So it's been quite an extensive undertaking, and many of our families are taking advantage of that. So the strategies that are being utilized are coming off of the understanding of this data. They are recognized as research-based strategies, and they will flow into the next school year. So that's a 40,000-foot view of what we're doing for summer school for this data.
Superintendent Schneckloth, can I add to that? So when we look at some of these data, I think it feels very broad. Like, I'm tired of looking at this. And I heard you say that, Director Posher, and I think that is a valid concern. And so to answer your question, we at the building level, we identified who are those specific K1 and 2 students. This early literacy, I don't know if crisis is too strong of a word, and who are these ones that are not going on. Superintendent Schneckloth said, or actually Mr. Williams said, 53% of our kindergartners are not going to first grade ready. So we are finding those specific kids, and we were making individual phone calls, not just a flyer. If you're interested, sign up. We are calling that parent and saying, this is why we're asking for you to do this with us. We are identifying using that early literacy test, that early e-reading is what we called it. So anybody that wasn't benchmark, we're calling and saying, your son or your daughter, this is where they're currently at. We would like to have 7 weeks of time meeting with them daily by someone that is trained in this program. We will offer it virtually, or at the building, to try to get your kiddo up to that. So it's very much, to Superintendent Schneckloth's point, it is very much tied to exactly who the kids are and what they need to get them ready for first grade.
Can I chime in on that too, what Mr. Driscoll said? I appreciated your comment about the ESSER funds also, because I don't think this is, I think we all realize when you see data like this, that this isn't something that one round of summer school is going to remedy. I mean, we've been living in this world for 15 months. And so I appreciate the planning that the Davenport administrators, teacher leaders, teachers, principals, with AEA support have been working on for weeks. And we'll get feedback from the DE, as Mr. Williams said. But I appreciate that the plan, which you'll see per your request, is a multi-year plan. So it's what's right now, right? What are we going to do in August to get this off the ground? But not just off the ground and then what? It's because then we're going to do this next summer, and then we're going to wrap this in, because teachers are busy and overwhelmed, and you can't put all the pieces on them at one time. And so I look forward to sharing that plan with you, because I do like that it's urgent and immediate, but it's also long-term and visionary, which is what we're going to need, because you can't recover from data like this in 7 weeks or even in a semester.
Director Beck?
One thing that I'm appreciating not hearing is about the next shiny new program, because that's something we have heard in my first couple of years as a board member. We'd get a presentation on, this is what we're doing at this school, and then that school is doing something different, and this is the new thing. And so I'm happy to hear that we're not, just throwing out the baby with the bathwater, because we know that we have already in place things that we can do to get students to learn how to read. And I think, Dr. Stevenson, you hit the nail on the head. What I was thinking, we need to do something right now, but whether there was a pandemic or not, we needed to do something right now. But I appreciate the fact that this is also something that has to continue in perpetuity. Once you have students reading at benchmark K through 3, a lot of those other issues that we're dealing with in the district begin to start to get smaller. A lot of behavior issues and disproportionality issues in discipline stem from the fact that students, at least research shows, that they are not reading at grade level at third grade. And so I can't emphasize how important I think we all think that this is, and that's why we're so passionate about it, and why we want to hear exactly what's happening, because we want to make sure that we are getting to all of our students. As Director Snyder said, they all deserve this. They all deserve support, and they all deserve support as soon as possible. I really appreciate, Mr. Driscoll, your description of what was going on to get students into summer school this summer, because for me as a parent, I wasn't sure, but my student happened to be not in the population that was called, right? But I think it's important that we start communicating that type of thing to everyone, not just the families who need the services, because that way we all know, everyone knows that all of the students do matter. And so I appreciate your explanation there. And I would hope that in our future, as we go into this year and following years, that's the level of detail we're approaching early literacy from anytime, whether it's a pandemic or not. That personalized level of your child isn't meeting benchmark in kindergarten. How can we reach out to the parents to make sure that we're building a team to get them to where they need to be? So thank you.
Director Posture.
Do we know what percent of the students that were eligible to attend summer school actually participated?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can easily get it.
Do you have
No.
a rough idea or anything?
No, we haven't gathered that. They're gathering it now. And so I can easily get that from one of our coordinators and send it.
Director Snyder.
Do we have any data regarding attendance and or say when it was online participation? Because I don't want anyone to confuse my words that I said earlier in that, I feel teachers weren't doing their jobs, because that's absolutely not true. As we've seen with many other things, teachers can only do so much. And if those kids don't have their butts in their seats in front of them, they can't do anything. And I am really wondering what our attendance was like, and as well as online participation.
I don't know if I don't have those data, TJ, and I don't know if that's something we could pull together. And
Absolutely, we can gather that information. We do have that information and can get it. Sorry, I was taking a note.
No, you're fine.
Anyone else? President Gosa, did you have anything to add?
I agree with everything that was said by all of you. I couldn't be more proud to be the president of this board. Every board member was very adamant on wanting to get something done. I do appreciate the fact that you're not only going to have a game plan going into August, but subsequent years as well, because you have to have something sustainable. So I do appreciate that. Again, I'm like in awe of all the board members and all their questions and the sense of urgency. I love it. I'm right there. I want to see a game plan. I want to know what's going to happen before the start of the school year. I understand that the Department of Ed has to approve the plan or whatever, but I do feel the same way like Director Snyder said, that needs to be presented to our board, because at the end of the day, when the state board's out of there, it's our board that's going to be holding the ball going forward. So, and I imagine plans like these have to go before the Department of Ed, no matter what district it is or whatever. But I want to reiterate that I do appreciate the fact that you're going to have a game plan going forward in August and for the subsequent years on how we're going to, because it's going to be a long-term thing. So I greatly appreciate that. And that was all I had, Vice President Hayes.
Thank you, President Gosa. Anyone else have anything more to add? Director Beck?
I do want to emphasize that we do appreciate the work that you're all doing. And I personally don't want anybody to think that we don't think the teachers are doing their job or the administrators or anything like that. This is just something that the data are there and they've been there, and we've been chomping at the bit to get something done. And so I think we're just so excited now when we're hearing the word go, or we can see it, in front of us finally, that we're very passionate about that. So that's,
No, I totally get that. And the key is you got to execute the plan. I mean, a plan is only as good as the paper it's written on. You have to execute the plan. It has to be sustainable. You have to have a great deal of intentionality behind it too. And that's what we're going to do.
thank you.
Director Hayes, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, go ahead.
How do we get your attention? Like, because the directors have raised their hand and wait to be called on, and if I want to speak, should I interrupt like this? How should we do this
I
moving
apologize.
forward?
That I
Don't
wasn't looking around,
apologize.
but no, if you have something, we don't want to go. Usually when I ask if there's any more to add, I'm
That
sorry
would be
for
the
not
time.
looking over. Please, Mr.
Not at
Dresser.
all. This was a serious question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the
Did you have
proper-
something you want to add?
Oh, absolutely.
Go ahead.
All right. I did hear Director Poshin, you asked a question. You said, what would happen if we poured our resources into certain buildings and see what would happen? And I guess I want to really shine a light on the partnership that we have with the AEA and the amount of work that they've done with us. Probably 4 or 5 years back, they poured a lot of human resource and expertise into Jefferson Elementary. And the result was Jefferson Elementary, under the leadership of Cami Montoya, and in partnership with this agency, saw a big jump. Following that, resources came to Monroe Elementary, and we saw a large jump because of that. And that work wasn't like a splash in the pan. That is what, under the leadership of Mr. Williams and Ms. Hoffman and the others, we're taking what we've learned and really trying to apply that district-wide, because it is all students. So when I hear you ask these questions, I think, yeah, absolutely. And so I want to point out that there is precedent for the work that is being done. And the other thing, to Director Snyder's point around, just the passion that I was feeling from him, I want you to know that one of the things that we are doing as a work group is creating also a responsibility and accountability index. So whatever we're creating, who is ultimately accountable, and what are we going to use to hold those people or that person accountable for the things that we're implementing. So while we're showing you, I think we referenced 30 and 40,000 foot views. The things that you guys are bringing up are absolutely part of it. And I'm trying to balance, like, how often do I respond and give you answers, and how many of the answers are rhetorical, and I'll find my spot over time. But I did want to kind of touch on a couple points.
Thank you. Was there anyone else at the table that I missed?
I will help you in the future with that.
Thank you. Team effort. Director Snyder.
I just also want to stress that no matter what plan we come up with, no matter what school district your kids are in, if they're in private school, public school, teachers and building staff cannot do this alone. Parents are going to have to read with their kids. Let their kids read to them, neighbors, friends, grandparents, church members. We need to spend more time reading to our kids and having our kids read to us. Teachers only have so much time during the day. It is absolutely imperative that as a community, we get involved with these kids, because it just absolutely has to happen. Has to happen.
Director Beck.
One last thing. I know all of us have ideas, and one of the things that I've heard multiple people say is we have a community of people who want to be involved and think outside the box. We don't necessarily, we'll all go read in a school. We have lots of local businesses who would be willing to become reading buddies, or, even if it's just, I think some of us made little videos for Dr. Seuss Week that we shared with the schools. And so we have you know, we have all of these resources, and we want to see us take advantage of all of those resources and not just rely on the money we get from the state and our taxes, but the goodwill of our community, because it really does take a village, and we know that. And that way we're not piling on and piling on and piling on our teachers. We can acknowledge the good work they're doing and let them do that good work, but we can help them by including everyone in these types of endeavors.
Director Pasta.
Mr. Driscoll, when you talked about the two programs at Jefferson and at Monroe, was there any type of attempt to involve the parents in that whole program? What was kind of the background behind that?
So I can't speak too much to what Jefferson was doing, so I could only speak to Monroe. But we established goals in the area of reading, math, behavior, our leadership, and just our capacity. And then the fifth goal through the ESSA process was our community partnerships with families, and just this idea of creating a positive and collaborative culture around home to school connections. That can sound a little bit vague, like, oh, positive, like, does that mean like more potlucks or events? But we actually, through our leadership team, developed protocols for interacting with parents and family members, and how to draw them into kind of the educational process. I think that school feels foreign to some parents, and so they sometimes might come to a meeting and smile and nod, and other times might feel a little bit like an adversarial relationship. So we created, through a lot of leadership meetings and conversations, protocols for interacting with parents and drawing them into the relationship. So yes, the long answer to your question is we do have protocols. The short answer is yes. The parent and community involvement was part of it, yes.
Thank you. Just one other thing, when we talk about putting in resources and that, of course, we got to think about finances and everything, and not, start a program and then, the funding goes away, whether we're using ESSER funds or whatever. But in my mind, if we can put the resources here into early literacy, there could be savings down the road. And for example, dropout prevention or students at risk, and I'm sure I'm missing some others here, that if we can get it done at an early age, that maybe there could be savings down the road. But in my mind, we need to get those dollars as close to those kids as we possibly can, and that's got to be right there in the classroom.
Anything more to add? Okay, well, I guess I can say that I agree with everything that's been said here. This is really urgent. I'm really glad that the focus is not only on third grade, that it's dropped down to kindergarten, because, you lose some of those brain cells after time. So I'm happy that this is taking place earlier, and thank you all for such a fruitful discussion. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any board requests?
Oh, yeah. Mine's completely unrelated to anything we've been doing.
And also, I would like to add, the board would like to express our sympathies to a couple of families. I apologize I didn't do these during the board reports, but I didn't have them at that time. West High has suffered a couple loss, and the board would like to express our sincere condolence to the Chris Norton family, who was a secretary at West, and also Vicki Arp's family, who was a para at West. And thank you, Brenda, for giving me those. Okay, our first board request comes from Director Snyder as an agenda item to have a meeting ASAP after we have a tentative plan on early literacy. And why are we requesting the information? I would like a thorough board discussion before we approve any plan. This,
I know my writing's horrible.
okay. This board takes a beating on this data. Let us utilize some of our resources, connections, and ideas to make this plan a success. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on.
Thank you.
He was waiting for that one.
Oh, no.
And this is from Director Beck. 712 agenda item. I would like to have a presentation showcase on the foreign exchange program from the families, students, and coordinators. Why? Is through some conversation I've become aware of how valuable this program is to some of our families. It's a good program, and I think we would like that we would all benefit from knowing about it. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, President Gosa. The final board request is from Director Hayes. It's an informational request. In the old building, I don't know if any of you remember, but we had a graph posted on the wall, and I'm wondering if this is something that we can use in this room, possibly here on this wall, to track from the beginning of the school year, beginning August 23rd of this year, or whenever the first testing period is, and track it so we can actually visually see our progress on where we're going in early literacy. And reason being is I feel the board would like to see visual reminders of how we're progressing with early literacy. Can I get a second?
Second. Yeah.
That's the stop sign or the slow sign?
We know that visual reminder works.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, or the superintendent's report.
No administrative reports
Or
at
no
this time.
administrative report.
Reflection.
Oh, I apologize, Director Gosa. Reflections. Okay, we'll start at the other end of the table with Director Klein Jerome. And please, could you reflect on tonight's meeting?
I really appreciated the literacy presentation, and I believe the passion of the board in getting something done came through loud and clear. We aren't just going to sit here and look at the numbers and then move on, and 3 months from now look at more numbers. We are firmly behind it. Let's get something done. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that we are moving finally on the long-range facility plan. Seems, again, like we talk about a lot of things and we never move on things. So I appreciate both those things moving along.
Mr. Poston?
Second everything that Karen just said. I second everything that Karen just said.
Thank you. Director Beck?
Yeah, I was going to say, seeing all of the board so passionate about our students and their achievement is really the highlight for me. And I remember Mr. Driscoll having a presentation from Jefferson, and I believe Monroe did a presentation as well. And I remember at the beginning of my tenure, I remember asking why we weren't doing this in all of our schools. And I understand it's resource intensive, but I'm happy to see that we are now doing that. So,
Mr. Snyder?
Well, again, everything that was said before, but also meeting Mr. Driscoll and Dr. Stevenson, welcome to the team. As you can see, we all have a lot on our plates and very much looking forward to working with you guys.
President Gosa?
One of my first ones would be the new cabinet members having joined in the conversation with the board right away and giving their thoughts and input and feedback. I thought that was great. I too agree with everything that Karen said on the long range plan and as well as, the early literacy. And my famous words are, we've talked about it, we saw the data on it, so let's be about it now and get something done.
Okay. Superintendent Snacklaw?
I have watched a lot of data presentations in this boardroom, and that was about as raw of a presentation as I've seen. And it's difficult to do that. So I'm proud of this organization to do that. I also know that the plan is being put in place. These are a lot of times celebrations, but my reflection is, we are communicating as a district and as a leadership team. I consider the school board a part of that in a much better manner. But one thing that I learned tonight is that sometimes we're not given all the right information to the school board. There are things that you learned tonight that you didn't have. So my goal is to make sure that we are listening to those things as a leadership team and ensuring that that's in our Friday report, that we're talking about those things so our board understands and knows those things as we move forward. So that's my reflection moving forward. There are some wonderful things going on, and I think that should be the information as we move forward. So as I was listening and reflecting and trying to improve from this seat, that's what I heard and learned. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that.
Absolutely. And I can literally just reiterate what everyone said, but I was extremely impressed with the new cabinet members jumping in like you've been here for some time and presenting your expertise. That was awesome. And I appreciate Mr. Driscoll having me focus to the other side of the room. Thank you for that. Normally, some people would just sit quiet, but I appreciate your speaking up. So I do realize that you will be an asset to the cabinet. Also, I hate to beat a dead horse, but the literacy, that was great. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing something that comes out of this discussion rather than having another presentation 6 or 7 months down the line and we haven't moved. And I'm looking forward to that graph getting on the wall so we can actually see what's happening and have discussion with that. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
meeting adjourned.